Today, we have the unique opportunity to interview Abraham Anderson. And what is really fascinating about Abraham is he's Mr. Knoxville. I own in Knoxville, Tennessee. And the funny thing about trying to buy a mobile home park off market today is, for whatever reason, everybody in the world wants to buy them off market today. At least it feels that way relative to other asset classes. So my friends in self-storage, apartments, even office, they tell me, I don't know what it is about mobile home parks, but in the last 5 years, everybody in the world, from institutions to young people in their early 20s in rural Mississippi, want to buy mobile home parks. And I get this question all the time from mom and pops when I cold call, like, what is going on in the marketplace? And my wife gets cold called, which is crazy to think about. And what is fascinating to me about Abraham is that when I cold call in Knoxville, because again, I own 3 out there, everybody knows him. So in this day and age, when literally the phone is ringing off the hook if you own a mobile home park, Abraham's found a way to stand out, and in a big way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And also, Abraham has a really unique strategy as well, acquiring mobile home parks. So lots of great stuff to talk about. Abraham, catch everybody up to speed. Let's start with where you were at before you were in mobile home parks, which was insurance sales.
Sure. And thanks for having me on, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Yeah, before I was into real estate, I was in insurance. And you can make a lot of money doing that. I enjoyed it. It's also a people business. You meet a lot of people and talk to them. One thing that I really like about real estate, mobile home park space in particular, is it's much more of a friendly business. Like you and I, on paper, we should be competitors. We own in the same market. We're looking in the same market, but it's not that feeling. We work together, we share information, we do things like this. In insurance, that would be unheard of. Everyone is at each other's throat. So I just wanted to make that distinction between the two. But yeah, I was in insurance. I was the #1 life insurance agent in the US for a Fortune 50 company. Did a ton of insurance. And I feel like that it actually helped me carried over into real estate, because the demographic I would target was Medicare age 65 to 85, and that's really the same age group that owns all the parks. But like I say, insurance was fun. Definitely teaches you a lot of people skills, but I am definitely happy I made the switch over into real estate.
Yeah, I sold cars and it was brutal. I can only imagine selling insurance, the rejection you go through, the customer service you go through. It's just such an amazing experience to build character and learn how to run a business. So I'm sure it prepared you incredibly well.
Mm-hmm. And some of the big things, and this is relevant really in any type of sales and in mobile home parks, when you're talking to these people, really listen to what they have to say. Some of them want to tell you their background and how they came to get the park and stuff like that. And I'm genuinely interested in this. And if you're just like, yeah, oh, hey, I got to go. They can tell. This is a relationship business. And I know we'll get into cold calling here in a minute, but one of the things is it's a long game. I have called people and talked to them over a 2-year period before they ended up wanting to sell their properties. So don't be in a hurry to get off the phone. Actually listen to them and try to hear their story, because it's pretty interesting. A lot of them are. So just pay attention and focus on them.
I love that. And yeah, right before we get into it, you touched on something that 2 days ago when we were having lunch, you said, which is it's kind of like a little fraternity, if you will, of fellow mobile home park owners. And instead of trying to compete and tear each other down, we're doing the opposite. And even if you want to say that's just the nature of the business and there's a lot of altruistic people in it, there's also a really, really big, important piece of this, which is that if your park does better, the comps for my park will also improve the valuation if an appraiser comes through. So if I want to refinance or sell my property and yours is humming along, there's tons of reasons why we should share things like what we're charging for lot rent, what issues we're having with the counties, what contractors to avoid, because if you're doing better, that means so am I. So it's not quite as cutthroat, because not just because there's a lot of good people in this space, but also because there are ways we can help each other out.
That's an excellent point. I'd never even considered that, but really it's a win-win-win. I mean, you improve the property, the rents go up, the residents have a nicer place to live. The city doesn't hate you quite as much. And also, as you said, it helps the comps for all the other park owners. So I've never considered that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Real quick, I tell everybody how many parks you've bought and how many pads that you own.
So right now we've got 15 parks and it's around 1,200 lots.
And when did you start?
So I've been in real estate for about 6 years, and I've been specifically in parks for about 3 years. So all of that's been within the last 3 years.
So on average, you're talking 400 lots a year for the last 3 years.
Correct, but it's almost like in a hockey stick. It was like
Yeah.
a little bit, and then
Yeah.
straight up there. Most of them have been within the past year, whether that's because of COVID and a lot of sellers panicked or finally decided to get out of it or what. But yeah, it's been a wild ride.
So first off, that's incredibly impressive. And then another really big important thing too is those are all relatively very close knit, which we'll talk about a little bit later because I want to hear more about your strategy. But the obvious question why people are tuning in right now is, what is this guy doing? Abraham, teach me.
Okay, I'll say, and really there is no secrets to it. A lot of it is a grind. You may see the Facebook post or the forum post, hey, I just got another park, and you're like, man, what the heck am I doing? What are they doing different? Well, they may have got that one park and they may have been said no by 300 other people. And that one park, they may have talked to them, like, as I mentioned, for 2 years. So the big thing is keep your funnel full. What I did is I drew a map around where I live in the Knoxville area. I listed out every single mobile home park. I then looked up who owned it. I tried to do research on them. Do they have another business? What else are they into? Usually you can find something. They don't just do the park. Some of them do though. And then I would skip trace, which is a fancy way of saying look up their phone number, and I would just reach out to them, call them up. And there's no magic way, and you're not going to trick them to sell the park. A lot of it is timing. Just be friendly. I call them up, say, hi, my name's Abraham. I live in the area. Have you ever thought about selling your mobile home park? And most of the time, the answer will be, no, I don't want to sell. No, I'm leaving it to my kids. No, I'm not ready yet. And I usually ask them, well, would you look at an offer? And some of them, yeah, I'd look at one. So that kind of gets the ball rolling, try to get the information, how many lots, lot rent, and then call them back and present that to them. But most of the calls you make, they either won't want to sell at all or they're just not ready yet. And then, try to figure out, well, would you have any plans in the future to sell? And then the key really is follow up. Like I said, I've missed out on deals because, I might have called them 8 times over 8 months. And then I missed out the 9th month, I forgot. And then I call them the 10th month and they already signed a contract with somebody else. So that can be frustrating. So even if it's just Google Calendar or some other basic CRM to track the people you're talking to, because you can get lost after you've called the 50th person. You're not going to keep up with all of it. And like I mentioned earlier, just be friendly, listen to them talk. If you don't have a great memory, make notes about it so you can remember it when you call them up again the next time. And another tip I'll say is, if at all possible, and you may live in California and you're trying to buy in another state, so you might not necessarily be able to do this, but if you can get in front of them and meet them in person, that makes a difference. Most people aren't even calling. They're sending a postcard. Another group is calling them. Almost nobody is meeting these people. So I like to meet them, take them out to lunch. I mean, what's that going to cost you? $30. And that sticks out in their mind. They'll remember you. And then when you call them the next time, you're not just a number on the screen, you are a face with that. So those, I'd say, are the big items. It's not that, It's not that sophisticated. It's just a matter of being consistent and thorough.
Abraham, are you doing that to me? Because you literally just took me out to lunch.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to buy all your parks one day.
I want to drill down to a point, which is that you don't view a cold call as a transactional activity, meaning I have called you, now you will sell me this park, or that was a waste of a call and it's over, right? So in other words, you're not viewing this as I pick up the phone and boom, I'm going to have X number of offers out and it's a numbers game, yada, yada, yada. You're going, I'm going to plant seeds. I'm going to, even if someone's not a seller, I'm still going to get in front of them. I'm still going to go have lunch with them, hang out with them, force the issue to get in front of them face to face. And then you're going to play the long game. And then what comes in is what you and I learned in sales, CRM, follow up. The thing is, in your sales and my sales, my sales background, it was a little bit more focused on what can I do right this second? Because if you're not buying a car from me right now, I'm probably never going to see you again. So then it gets into overcoming objections. You're not selling right now. Why not right now? You have to call your spouse. Well, here's a phone. Call your spouse right now. Let's see what they say, right? Like to get into all of those jumping over these objections in a more point-to-point sale where it's transactional, it's right now or never. You have to get really pushy. You have to overcome objections. But here you can slow play it a little bit more because you're building a relationship. So I wanted to highlight that for those who don't have a sales background, because when I hear that, Abraham, that's the first place my mind goes to is you are not viewing this like I'm going to pick up the phone. If you say, oh, I'm going to give it to my kids. Great. Now I'm in overcoming objections mode. No, you're going, that's awesome. I hope one day I get to give something like this to one of my kids. Do you have time for lunch? And then boom, then I call and I'm like doing my own cold calling. People are like, have you met Abraham? I'm like, how does everybody know this guy?
Yeah, and that's a good point. It is not this high pressure sales tactic. That does not work at all. If you get pushy, that turns them off. And if they even were going to sell in the future, they're probably not going to call you. There was one seller that I'm actually buying their park now after. This one was about almost the beginning of when I started looking, so almost 3 years. Now I'm under contract to purchase their park. And they had mentioned there was another guy that had called them multiple times over the last couple of years, and they really didn't like this guy because he was doing kind of those same tactics. So don't be that guy. Another thing that helps, and it does stick out to them, is see if you can add value to them. A lot of, to give you one quick example, I had a seller that someone abandoned their mobile home, and they had never went through the process to get an abandoned title, and so I helped walk them through that. And this person may never sell their park. In fact, they said they wanted to leave it to their kids, but I had that information. I was happy to help them. And then, they, like I said, they remember that. And if they do ever want to sell, you're the person most likely they'll talk to. Another tactic I've done is I still keep up my insurance licenses, and I've got about 12 different park owners that they have their insurance with me now. I save them a bunch of money on their insurance. And so that's nice when they're actually calling you up. It may not be to talk about parks, but they might ask me an insurance question at the end of the call. I'm like, hey, John, you ready to sell your park yet? So that's just a couple things, see if you can add value to them and do anything for them, because that helps keep it both ways.
So at the end of the day, you're problem solving. And whether that's, I want to avoid a potential spike in capital gains rates, so I need to sell now, or whether it's, hey, let me help you with an eviction issue or an insurance issue, you are adding value to them and expecting nothing in return. So you're kind of attacking it from two different ways. Number one, your view when you pick up the phone is I'm going to add value to this person. It's not transactional, meaning I don't care if I get anything back. So you're more of a giver. And also at the end of the day, you're a problem solver, not a closer. And what I mean by that is when you think sales, you think, what is it going to take to get you to sign on the line right now? And it's like, that is so off-putting. People hate that. Instead, what you should be doing is listening to them and finding out how you can help them solve a problem. And if that ends up in you buying their property, great. And if not, guess what? They'll remember you and they won't do this. oh, hey, it's great to talk to you. I got a call coming in. Maybe we'll catch up
Sure,
some other time. And then they have your number and then they block your number and you never hear from them again,
sure.
right? People don't, the book I'm reading right now by Robert Greene puts it way more eloquently than I could right now. But people put on masks and they act. And a lot of times you can't really pay attention to the words coming out of their mouth because they don't want confrontation, or they don't want to tell you like, dude, you make me really uncomfortable. And I really just want to hang up the phone and block your number and never talk to you again. And they kind of play a little delicate game with you, and they're not direct. So the way you've kind of circumvented that is you pump them up full of value. You're, hey, I'm Abraham. I'm going to solve problems for you. I'm not going to expect anything in return.
Yes, 100%. And a couple of reasons why that's important without expecting anything is, number one, a lot of these park owners know every other park owner. So on the bad side of that, if you're a jerk and you're just in it to try to get them to sell and you're pushy, that's going to get around. Just like when you called around Knoxville and people mentioned my name, it could have been a much worse opinion if I was that kind of guy. So on the good side of that, if you're really friendly to them and you help them out, even if they don't want to sell, they may know another park owner, and then they say, hey, this guy, you talked to this guy Abraham, he helped me do this eviction here. That was cool. So and then the other way I like to view things is, I used to play as a kid a lot of video games, and you have an experience bar and you do a task and the experience would go up. So every time I help somebody or do something, it's like I'm getting another notch in the experience bar, and eventually I level up and get the next property. So you don't know when that's going to be or when it's going to happen. So without expecting anything, just keep going along. You're getting experience along the way, and then eventually you'll get a property.
Yeah, Stephen Covey, however you pronounce his name, in Seven Habits calls that the emotional bank account. So every time you do something for someone, it's like depositing something in the emotional bank account. And anytime you need a favor or something of them, you're withdrawing. So just from a very basic sense, if you're trying to withdraw, asking someone to sell you their park before you've even deposited anything, they're going to block your number or never pick up your call ever again.
Correct.
Love the video game example. By the way, the first time, and I bet you forgot this, you may not have, but the first time you and I met, I was playing Pokemon Go, and you were like, "Hey, Pokemon Go!"
Yeah, I remember that.
And
Yep.
confirm he is
There you
also a
go.
video game player.
And I just happened to be wearing an arcade shirt today. So
I love it. I love it. Let's real quick. I want to end off here. Those tips are awesome.
Can I make one other comment?
Oh yeah, please.
I think this is important. It just hit me. One thing, I meet a lot of people. I don't have this limitation, but I know a lot of people do. They're scared to cold call. And I would say two things. Number one, a lot of the calls that people get, cold calls, they're trying to sell them something. They want to take this person's money. You're calling to give them money or to solve their problem. And the worst they can say is no. I mean, I guess they could cuss you out, hang up on you, which I've had happen as well. But just don't take it personally. And the only way really to get over that is just to do it a lot. And eventually, even now, it's still kind of, I get nervous when I'm about to I just do it anyway. I just tell myself I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And I hit the number, and then, it's fine after that. So I just wanted to make that comment. You're calling to try to solve a problem for them. And you don't know, there may be someone right now, and I know there is, but certainly anywhere in the country, they want to sell their park. They want to sell. They don't know what to do or who to call. You may be the person to call them up and solve their problem. So don't be shy about it. Pick up the phone and start calling.
It's cold calling is easy to explain how to do it well, and it's hard to execute, because just like you said, there is a huge mental game to it. There's a timidity even that I'm sure you experience to this day, as do I. I get afraid to cold call sometimes. I cringe up thinking I'm going to get hung up on, or I'm not going to know what to say, or this, that, or the other thing. It happens to folks who are seasoned in sales, and it happens to newbies. It happens, but you got to pick up the phone. You got to develop your own style. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. You have to have that swag, and you have to keep picking up the phone. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. And I could describe that for mobile home park ownership too. It's easy to explain the business model. It is hard to actually execute it. So I love that. And one more bit before we move on to your strategy is, on our group mentorship call last night, one of my mentees said that they had a contract in front of someone, and then he found out the next day they signed another contract with another person for a lower price. And I've had that happen to me before, probably more than once. And I've probably been the receiver of that, right? Like I've probably been outbid by someone, but they picked my offer over a higher bid. And I will tell you why that is. Because if they like you and they trust you and they see something in you because of what Abraham's described up to this point, where you're making deposits in the emotional bank account, you're leveling up in your RPG, however you want to describe it. If you're investing that time and into that relationship, it can actually reward, it can actually become transactional. It can actually reward you financially, if nothing else, not just if you're winning the deal by a lower figure, but even if you're winning the deal at all. So I love all of that. Let's make a pivot now, Abraham, into talking about your strategy, because your strategy is very unique.
Sure. So, yeah, I'm not opposed to doing smaller parks, 20 to 30 lots. A lot of operators, they want 50 plus, 100 plus. And of course I do as well. And I own 100 plus lot parks, but there is a lot of value in smaller properties, especially if you can get 2 or 3, 20, 30 parks, within a 10-mile radius. It's almost as if you had a bigger park, because you can still finance them together later on, refinance them as one. You can have one manager for all of them. But sometimes your best deals are going to be on the smaller ones. And the reason why is because, as I touched on earlier, these bigger groups, these REITs, these hedge funds, they're not going after the 30 space park. And then since they're not getting hit up as much, they're more likely to possibly want to sell and talk to you because they haven't been purchased yet. So don't turn away from those. I would say my average park is 30 to 40 spaces. So most of mine are smaller parks. So it's, like I said, they can be, if you get a lot of them close by, they're just as easy to manage as the bigger ones. And don't turn away from them, especially if you're starting out. I mean, call up every park. I mean, I would buy a park, and if it's near a park I have that's bigger already, I would buy almost any size. I bought a 6 space park next to a 50 space one I have right next door, so I consider them as one property. So just don't turn off, because you hear all the time, oh, we got to get these 100 space parks. You don't have to do that. Look at all the parks, but if a smaller one comes across your desk that pencils out, don't be opposed to that.
I love that, mostly because that's also my strategy. My average lot count is about 40 lots too. But one thing that I really want to highlight about your portfolio is it's tight, geographically speaking. So in other words, if you're in Knoxville and you find something in Powell or Maryville or Maynardville, you can drive to it within an hour. So you can buy a 30, 40 lot opportunity for your first one ever and manage it yourself, and then buy a couple more. And then once you hit 100, little over 100, you can actually finally hire an employee, plant your flag into the ground, and move on to the next one, which is exactly what we've done in Knoxville. We've got approaching 200 lots in the greater Knoxville area, and only need one property manager for all of it because of things like touchless pay and e-sign leases and all that jazz. And so in other words, what you've done really, really well is you've had a really tight geography, which has allowed you to go and have lunches with folks because you can drive to them in a day, right? So I think what it is, it's impatience. There's a lot of folks who want it and they want it now, and they'll be in Knoxville, but they'll call on Texas. And it's like, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage in the rapport building game, because you can't just hop in the car and go meet someone at Aubrey's for lunch, right?
Yes.
Like you can't do that if you're in Knoxville and you're sourcing in Texas. So impatience is one thing. And a lot of people listening in live in areas that you ain't never going to buy anything. So like, for example, you live in Seattle, good luck, man. It is so expensive out there. Denver, Colorado. Oh my goodness. It's so expensive out there. So another really cool, convenient thing about you and I is me being in Charlotte, you being in Knoxville, is we can buy smaller stuff. They're not overpriced yet. But yeah, I think one thing that I really wanted to highlight about what you do so well, Abraham, is because you have a really tight geography, not only can you hit a economies of scale, but also you can be Mr. Knoxville because everybody knows you.
Yep, that 100%. And it is very satisfying to, like, within a 5-hour radius, with one exception, I can get to all of my parks. Almost all of them are in Tennessee, so you can drive to them. And that really is, there's another benefit to that. If you ever did want to go and sell, there is something that adds value. Someone coming in to buy it, then you don't have 5 parks in Tennessee, 6 in Texas, 7 in Michigan. They're all in one central location, so you can get to them easy. You can manage them, and like you said, I mean, you have a competitive advantage. If you're buying in your backyard, you can get in that car, go to that person. If some problem comes up, some big capital item, sewer pipe starts leaking, and you have to get there, you can get up early one morning, drive there, get it done, and then drive back, up to 5 hours away. If you get past that, 6 hours, 7 hours, you really have to spend multiple days. So don't just look at all the parks, especially starting out, any size. You can probably get a better deal on it, and there's less people looking at it.
Abraham, thank you so much for coming on. Again, what you described is really simple, but it's very difficult to execute, and it takes a lot of years and a lot of grinding. So a lot of great nuggets. I will put some of your contact information in the show notes. Abraham, again, thank you for coming on. This has been really fun.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. I enjoy your podcast, and I'm glad to be on it.
Yeah. Take care, man.
Talk to you soon.